You confirm what you see? Okay. Okay. Very good. Welcome to this round number 3 of the Campionato Italiano Giovanile di Dibattito. Yeah. And my name is Fabrizio Thierry, and I'm the chair judge for this debate. Please, 2 judges, take the floor and say your name and your role. Thank you. Stancila and Marini, please.
I'm Annalisa Stancila, and I'm one of the 3 judges for this debate.
Very good.
My name is Franco, and I am one of the 3 judges of this debate.
And we have the 2 teams. The pro teams is Lazio Devil's Advocates. Confirmation? Confirmation, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, you are. Okay. And we have Campagna the Debeatles. Confirmation, thank you. Okay,
yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Okay, firstly, we will understand the names for the first speaker for proposition team. Who will be the first speaker for proposition team?
I will be the first speaker of the proposition team, and I am Teresa Pignatelli.
Pignatelli, yeah. First opposition speaker.
Andrea Frangipani. I'm the first speaker of the opposition team.
Yes, Frangipani. Second speaker for proposition team.
I am Mattiela Portella, and I'm the second speaker of the pro team, and I will also be doing the final rebuttal.
Okay, La Portella.
Yes.
Yes, try to speak closer to the microphone. Thank you.
Okay.
Because sometimes your voice goes down and then goes up. So some word we can miss them. Okay. So try to speak very, very close to the microphone. Okay. So second speaker for opposition team.
I am the second speaker of opposition. I'm Eugenio Bolvero, and I also do the reply speech.
Okay. And then third opposition speaker.
I am the third speaker of the pro team, and I am Aurora Mazza.
Yeah, okay. Let's go to the last speaker. Third opposition speaker. We didn't hear anything.
I'm Miele, and I will be the third speaker for the opposition team.
Okay. Okay. Very good. I am going to copy and paste the already known motion. Okay. Filippo Latino, hello. Are you okay?
Sì, era solo un check.
Okay? Very good. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we are reading the motion. This house would require all foods already on the market to undergo the European safety assessment currently mandated for novel foods. So there's an INFOSLIDE. Novel foods refers to foods introduced in Europe from May 15, 1997, whose marketing is currently regulated by Regulation EU 2015-2283/2283. Okay, this is the motion. We have proposition team and we have opposition team. Please, judges, have you anything to say, or can we start this debate? Franco, Annalise, are you okay?
Yeah, everything's good.
Okay, we had a check for the microphones, and please, first speaker, Pignatelli from proposition team, please take the floor. And excuse me, you remind that I will be the timekeeper too, okay? And you know that if we make some sounds, and you have to wait for 1 minute for the first three speeches before any POI, and that you have to stop POIs after 7 minutes, okay? So you can keep your mobile phone or your smartphone to check the time, the present time, but please don't make it sound together with mine, because there are some problems in our audio system. Okay, please, Ramazza, can you pull down your microphone, because there's some echo. Okay. At the moment, we can go. If there's some echo between my microphone and Ramazza's microphone, I will close mine and will open mine only for this sound. Okay, the sound of my smartphone. Okay, it's okay. Well, so Mignatelli, the first one, please, when you want.
Okay. Hi, I am Teresa Pignatelli, and I am the first speaker of the Pro team. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So, as the Pro team, we believe that all food already on the market should undergo the European safety assessment required for novel foods. First, I would like to start with some definitions. Novel foods are foods not significantly consumed in Europe before May 15, 1997. European safety assessment is the set of standardized procedures to inform policy, protect consumers, and ensure safe products, processes, and environments across the European Union. They require rigorous data analysis, which includes allergenic testing, toxicological studies, and long-term effects. Our team line provides the following. As the first speaker, I am going to deal with higher health insurance, whereas the second speaker will examine the scientific updating of food supply in Europe and regulatory coherence of laws. The third speaker will resume our main points, stressing the importance of monetary regulations and RAPEX system, which is a safety gate, for both common foods for widespread consumption before 1997 and novel foods. So, we all know that in the past decades, the processes for collecting agricultural goods or the production of dairy products and intensive farming may have undergone various kinds of transformations, also due to climate change, affecting final products and subsequently their effects on our body. In fact, these transformations are related to biological dangers caused by bacteria, viruses, molds, chemical dangers, which include pesticides, additives, preservatives, food coloring, dioxins, and physical dangers, which is the presence of microscopic fragments of toxic elements such as plastic, glass, hair. So, nutrition is fundamental for our health. We do all have to pay extreme attention to our nutrition, otherwise we could face serious problems for our body. This is the main reason why we believe a strict surveillance on food is required. Unfortunately, in 2023, 5,600 food disease outbreaks have been recorded by the European Food Safety Authority. These risks are mainly related to vegetables, eggs, meat, cereals, which are all food highly consumed even before 1997. So, for these reasons, such food should all undergo to the European safety assessments required for novel foods. Let's examine the risks of some foods caused by wrong preservation. Let's consider eggs, a food we all consume regularly in our diet. Eggs are not always pasteurized, and this can cause salmonella. Some cheese molds can lead to dangerous intoxications.
UI.
One second. And temperature storage of meat is not always respected, determining severe food poisonings. I accept your PI.
Something that is inherent on the food. How can this assessment eventually be of any good to solve the problem that you are saying? How can the FSA assessment resolve these problems that you're saying?
These problems, as I said before, these problems can occur to common foods consumed before 1997, and the European Food the European Food Safety Authority can avoid these dangers by testing also the common foods with this more precise testing that they require for novel foods. So moreover, non-compliant products lead to immediate withdrawal from the market, financial penalties, and high risks for consumers. Now, as long as it exists are European regulations, all food should be tested, also the ones before 1997, because they may have changed their composition or production processes.
POI.
1 second. They may have changed their composition or production processes, or incorrect storage may have spoiled the food. I accept your POI.
Are you aware of the fact that there exists the regulation number 852 that already regulates food and their food hygiene? So every year we have or every food is currently regulated. So there already exists a regulation, and so another one is not needed. Are you aware of the fact that?
Yes, we believe that regulation is necessary, but if we do a more strict surveillance on food, is it is necessary. It is necessary because nutrition is something very important, and we do have to pay attention. We can't we can't risk to have problem to not have safe foods in our market. So moreover, if a product changes its production process,
POI.
1 second. If a product changes its composition or production process, it may be considered by the European Food Safety Authority as a novel food because its process of production has not been tested for as long as the ones of common food. And the European Food Safety Authority is not sure of the possible outcomes that this product may have on the European market and on consumers. I accept your view.
Are you aware of what changes between a normal regulation currently mandated on EU or the EU assessment for novel food? Are you aware of what changes?
Yes. However, we believe that the same regulation should be for common foods and novel foods for the reasons I mentioned to you before. So now, for these reasons, we believe that mandatory regulations are necessary for all foods, and they should all be tested with the same precision, and in order to avoid dangers for consumer and protect the market of the European Union. I end my speech now. I will give the floor to the first speaker of the cons team.
Seven minutes and 57 seconds. Okay. Annalise, Franco, are you okay? Okay. Franco is okay? Yes. Well, very well. We can go to the first speaker from opposition team, Frangipani.
Okay. So my speech will start in. Is everybody here? Okay. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. My name is Andrea. I'm here today to take the role of the first opposition speaker for when it comes to the motion that's already been stated beforehand. So, first of all, I'm going to say that you can expect these 3 things from my speech. First, a general part of refutation about the stuff that the first proposition speaker said. Second, a counter framing for the motion. And third, the first substantive argument for our case. So let's start by the computation. First of all, they said that problems that can occur to common foods and they can occur to common foods can be avoided by a more precise testing, but they didn't specify on how would the test be applied and how would they really be beneficial. They also talk about the incrementation of this type of testing, so the subsequent removing of the products from the shelves, but they didn't talk about the economic impact that this would have, how much would it cost. So now let's move on to the counter framing. Let's do some some clarification. I accept the PO.
So don't you think that also not doing these tests and these foods having an impact on the people's health would have an effect on the economy? Maybe it would be even worse. Maybe a little test would cost less than an hospitalization for intoxication.
Yes, but we're not talking about not doing tests anymore entirely, not removing any type of testing entirely. We're just saying that what we have now is actually fine. Now I'm gonna move on to the counter framing. So I'm gonna start by doing some clarification on the motion. This motion proposes that all foods currently available on the market in the European Union should undergo the European safety assessment that is currently applied to novel foods. Novel foods are defined as foods that have not been consumed significantly within the EU prior to 1997. So basically, what the proposition team what the motion is stating is that this type of testing should be applied to non-novel foods. This type of testing follows the two precise steps. First of all, the foods is retired from the market, as I said before, and after this, it is constantly controlled once in the market. So we have a constant monitoring of the product effect on the customer's health. So what we must prove as the opposition team is basically that this policy will cause significant harm, first of all, to food availability, pricing, and diversity. Second, it will impose unnecessary regulatory burdens on producers, especially small businesses, without clear safety benefits. And last, it will also create inefficiencies in food regulations and supply chains. So it will lead to unnecessary costs and disruption. So it will kind of be a damage to everybody. Now, let's see specifically what the stakeholders in this motion. We have the consumers, so the broader public, the customers. They are particularly vulnerable or low-income groups that will be disproportionately affected by rising food prices because due to increase of economical impact because of the more testing, obviously they will have to raise the prices of the food and low-income groups will not be able to afford it. It will also have an impact on regulatory bodies such as the EFSA. So these bodies would face an increased workload and their resources would not be distributed properly. The status quo right now is that non-novel foods are already illegal if they aren't safe. No food is unregulated. But we still think that we should not apply to more testing to non-novel foods. Why is it a problem? Because it will cause market disruption, as I said before, and this policy will introduce unnecessary regulatory process that many food already go under. Now I'm gonna move to the first substantive arguments of my speech. We as a team think that non-novel foods do not require the novel food regulation, as I said before. Extending the novel food regulation to all foods slows down the EFSA controls, and retiring, controlling, and replacing the foods is economically unsustainable. So now let's say I'm gonna go on with my arguments. We simply do not think that novel food do not pose the same level of uncertainty or risk that justifies such regulation. So basically, non-novel foods have been consumed in the EU for decades or centuries. So their safety profile is supported by long-term population-wide consumption data. These foods are already regulated under multiple EU food safety laws, and they are continuously monitored post-market. So we already know what this type of food is about. We know that they not actually pose a risk to the customer, to the consumer. The novel food regulation also exists to manage uncertainty, not familiarity. So when a food has a long history of safe consumption, the probability of unknown long-term health risks is significantly lower. So therefore, applying a framework designed to address unknown risk to foods with known safety profile is totally unnecessary. Risk-based regulation rely on differentiating between known and unknown hazards. Historical consumption is one of the strongest indicators of food safety, often stronger than short-term experimental data. So what we're trying to say is basically that we already know that this type of food, non-novel food, do not cause any type of long-term or short-term harm to the customer. So therefore, they do not need any kind of, no, they certainly go already to a amount of testing that can be considered enough. They do not need to go under even more testing that will cost the production factories and the customer more. It will have a massive economical impact, as I said before. So by preventing the applying of this policy, regulatory resources will not be wasted. There will be the meaningful improvement in food safety will be prevented, and will also prevent overregulation that is also unnecessary. That's my case.
8 minutes and 2 seconds. Okay, Franco and Annalisa, are you okay? Yes, very good. So let's go to the second speaker from proposition team, La Cortella. Please.
Okay, my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Hello everybody, I'm the second speaker of the pro team, and first thing I would like to reply of what the first speaker of the cons team has said. So his first point was the rising prices of products, and my team strongly believes that since security is fundamental and priceless, we can't let people die only because we worry about rising prices rising. And so it's better to prevent than see what comes next, because we don't know if we can sustain the prices of the consequences. My point is scientific updating of food supply in Europe and regulatory coherence. And I will break down now how scientific updating is fundamental as much as regulatory coherence of laws in all Europe. So first thing I will find,
POI,
yes.
are you aware of the fact that we in Europe already have some of the strictest regulation for when it comes to food? We can name some. For example, 852 and 853 regarding food hygiene and food market. Are you aware of this?
Yes, we are aware of this, but exactly, this is the point. We want to be sure and make sure that no one gets hurt and gets sick because we of some ignorance of people. We don't want to get people sick, and since the EU is very wide and has multiple millions of people living, we can't you can make mistakes. So it's better to prevent everything. We need to be sure 100%.
POI.
One moment, please. So I wanted to define what EFSA does and to prove my point. So EFSA is an acronym for European Food Safety Authority, and which is a structured scientific process to determine if a food product is safe for human consumption and whether its consumption presents any risks to consumers' health. So the goal of EFSA is to give and prove a scientific opinion to the European Commission on the potential toxicological and allergenic nutritional risks of the new food before it's admitted onto the EU market. And we want to prove to you that since they're doing a great job on new foods, they should apply to the they should even apply them to the foods that are not novel foods. So the examination process for new foods is goes through 5 phases. The first, the phases are consist in identifying potential biological, chemical, or physical agents that may cause illness. Then they need to assess the severity of the and later, please. Let me finish my point and then I will accept the PI. Then, after identifying the risks and assessing the severity of the risks, they need to estimate the amount of new food that consumers consume on daily basis. And after all of this, the European Commission analyzes whether it's economical. They analyze the product from an economical point of view. So what I wanted to highlight is that the new products needs to go through all of this. Meanwhile, the products that were already in the market before May 15, 1997 don't. And so they skip all of these biological, chemical, physical, and the assessment of the severity of maybe health effects that might have on the population. Yes, your POI.
Yeah, isn't long-term consumption itself the strongest form of safety evidence, especially compared to novel foods where no population-level data exists?
Well, since normal people are not scientists, they might not know and they might not have enough knowledge to analyze and decide what the best products for them are. And so we need a specialist team to analyze possible hazards.
UI.
Yes.
Are you aware of the fact that this assessment does not make people more aware of their potential risk because it eventually prevents on the market food problematic to come?
I'm sorry, but I will answer you to now. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that after the product is allowed onto the European market, the manufacturer needs to must have data labeling in the case of wrong or misleading labels. In fact, if the product has a misleading labels, the manufacturer can face penalties and the product can be recalled from the market. So normal people um, um, can and have the right to know what they're eating and the possible hazardness that are that were considered by the European EFSA that analyzed the product. So I hope I answered your question. I will now keep going. Basically, what I wanted to highlight with explaining all of the EFSA processes is that new emerging technologies such as biotechnologies, advanced enzymatic processes, and AI-driven modifications and formulation are changing foods that are already on the market and they were already on the market before May 15, 1997. So basically, products' historical consumption is no longer sufficient for us. And a new scientific reassessment is necessary to verify that updated characteristics of the modified products caused by modified production processes or altered ingredients do not introduce unexpected risks into Europe. Um, Basically, we need to apply the same strategy that we used for the miracle berry. Miracle berry is also known as Cinepalum dolcificum, and it is a berry that is originary from Africa and whose fruits contain a glycoprotein called miraculin that alters food taste. This miraculin um, okay, just a minute. So what the process for the miracle berry had a really tough examination since the characteristics were really dangerous, and at first sight, the EFSA didn't consider it safe. But after a really long analysis that lasted 3 years, they decided to omit it, but limiting the this is the end of my speech. I will give the floor to Hans team.
8 minutes and 38 seconds. Lilis and Frank, are you okay? Yes, you are. So let's go to the second speaker from opposition team. Boller, please take the floor. Thank you.
Can you hear me just good?
Yeah.
Okay, my speech is going to start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everybody. My name is Eugenio Vallero, here today to take on the role of the second opposition speaker. But when it comes to the motion that already has been said beforehand, you can expect two things from my speech. First, a general part of refutation. Second, the reconstruction of the first argument. And thirdly, the last two substantive arguments. First, on some points of rebuttal. I'm going to divide my rebuttal on some points. First, they in speech opposition they continually say how we need a regulation, but they do not acknowledge with the fact that in status quo already exists regulation. We can name some. First, regulation of EU number 852 on food hygiene. Second, regulation of EU number 853 on additional hygiene rules for food or animal origin. And also another one, 178, general food law regulation and all foods novel or not novel foods. Also, it exists eventually an organ that is the RSFA that when a food problem is recognized, retires the food from the market and eventually removes every problem. So in the status quo, we already have for normal foods, I want to specify normal foods, regulation that are sufficient. EU is regarded as one of the safest for food countries. And also another, I want to specify another thing. We are talking about this regulation is for novel food. The regulation, the assessment that they are trying to impose that they do not know how to work. It works, it function in this way. The agency of the novel food needs to put the authorization needs to EU that eventually with EFSA, I finish this rebut and I accept your QI. Eventually, ask the authorization, and then once given the authorization, start the data that the agency needs to put in, and eventually the novel food will be regulated and will be on the market. So it's a process strictly regulated for something that we are not aware of. We don't have any data on those, so we need to find those data. Think about printed meat, insects, algae, foods that are never being consumed in Europe, and we don't know how it works. So this assessment is strictly regulated for novel foods that we don't know how they work. We know how the normal food work. So eventually they don't understand how they don't say how this regulation is strictly for normal food. Accept your QI.
So, don't you think that we should use strict regulations for common foods since there of all these outbreaks that have been recorded by the European Food Safety Authority?
Sorry, the point is we already have regulation. We are not, and you don't answer how your regulation and this regulation specifically eventually prevents the problem, since eventually it's like same, and it's the only difference is the data that we need to procure. We already have data on normal food. We don't have data of novel food. Moreover, they always say that they want to protect people, but they are the first because eventually we will see an emerge on prices. So first, some strategic mistake, they don't contribute significantly to their burden. They don't show how this assessment eventually proves to their side, and they don't acknowledge with status quo. And so we are seeing those two words, the word of proposition, where eventually cause flow higher, and our word in the status quo, we maintain the status quo, and there eventually the word where we have those safety problems, but they don't eventually better significantly. So the delta of the debate flows on our side because we maintain the status quo. They spend a lot of money and for eventually a not significant amount of the betterment of the stakeholders that we brought so far. So recalling our first argument, we have said how novel foods don't need those regulation. First, because they already exist regulation. Second, because we the normal foods don't need regulation like the novel foods. So concluding the part of the not constructive part of my speech, I'm going to pass on the constructive part of my speech. First, we argue that extending the regulation to non-novel foods would only contribute to make EFSA controls slower. The claim is applying novel foods assessment to non-novel food will eventually slow down the FSA ability to conduct effective food safety controls. Novel food assessment are resource intensive and time consuming. It is only one body and it needs to do research. The research that they say then they needs to be done in 9 months. So for a single food, they use 9 months, and that's what they're saying. A research from nature, so an evidence we are bringing now, an evidence shows how a single food needs about 2.5 years in order to be regulated, in order to give the authorization. So the food is removed from the market, then given authorization, it will be on the market. So we see how this system eventually is very slow, because imagine if now we are doing only for novel food, but imagine now we retire all of the foods and eventually give all of this workload to the FSA. How can we expect to be that to be efficient? So the mechanism of that, because all food must be reassessed as the motion states, and also they are trying to claim FSA must divert scientific to low risk when known foods. This creates backlogs and administrative congestion, and eventually this system itself fails. Just think about the fact that we are taking this evidence from EDU side. Eventually, only since 2018 to this day, only 2090 novel food have been analyzed at refused DPOI. So how can you expect to have this whole workload and to give it to scientists and eventually for it to be effective? So we have several impacts. First, slower detection of real risk food, because we have our workload. Eventually, the food that will need to be controlled will not be controlled. And second, we have the as an impact, we have the risk for the consumer. Third, so passing now on the third argument. First, controlling and replacing all food is economically unstable. Novel food assessment require extensive scientific testing and documentation that need to be provided by the agency itself. And think about the fact that we are taking an evidence from the European Parliament. On average, a single corporation spends for one novel food about 2 million euro. So think about that. A corporation for a single food should do this, and obviously they are not. They won't pay for those data, but they will eventually make the money on the consumers. So a normal person will find itself eventually very in a difficult situation, because every food on the market will rise price. We are not talking about a very low incoming of higher of price. We're talking about eventually a real problem for normal person, and so where they are damaging significantly. So concluding my speech, we can see how we are protecting really the people, and they eventually are not. So eventually think about the fact that we need to defend the status quo. With that, I rest my case. Thank you.
8 minutes and 15 seconds. Okay, if Alice and Franco are okay, yeah, we can go to the third speaker from proposition team. Matza, please, whenever you want.
So my speech will start in 3, 2, 1, go. Good evening, everyone. I am Aurora Maxam, and I am the third speaker of the proposition team. First of all, I would like to rebut to some of the things that the second speaker of the opposition team just said. You said that there already exists a lot of regulations, so new ones wouldn't be necessary. But like my teammate just said, in 2023, just 2 years ago, we experienced 5,600 disease outbreaks because of food. We do not think that these regulations are effective, because in 2023, a year which we should be advanced on these things, we should not worry about diseases because of food of food problem, of intoxication problems. But it was not like this. We had this problem. One moment. So clearly, these regulations were not as effective as they were meant to be. I accept your PI.
Can you explain clearly how the assessment and the regulation we're talking about today solves eventually the problem that you're trying to propose to us today?
Well, that is not the point. We need these European regulations to stop these diseases outbreaks, and most importantly, to ensure equally action among all the countries. It should not be possible in these years nowadays to still experience diseases. Then you also said that normal food do not need regulations like novel food. But have you ever considered that normal food, yes, we have historical consumption, we have consumed it for a very long time, but it is still dangerous. Salmonella is very dangerous from eggs. Also, raw chicken is one second, is really dangerous. So they are just as risky and as dangerous as novel food. And that is exactly why we need to control and try to limit the negative effects it can have on the population. I accept your PI.
Can you explain to us how this regulation specifically eliminates the issues that you've brought so far, salmonella, chicken, egg consumption? Can you say to us how this regulation solves all of these problems?
Well, because we have more tests. Of course, I'm not saying completely eliminating that would be utopic, but it's important to evolve with the food, how the food has changed, the process and the processes that are made in the industries have changed, and so that's why we need to change with them to do new tests to protect us from biological dangers, chemical dangers, and physical dangers. So these new regulations will implement tests and controls in general to try and reduce these risks. You also said that putting these regulations would slow down the FSA, and we wouldn't benefit from, of course, this slowdown. But don't you think we would? I refuse your PI. Don't you think we wouldn't benefit also from removed products from the market, and this is just because the products were not controlled properly? I will now resume the main points my teammates have said, and I will stress the importance of the associations that control the food regulations, especially the RAPEX, the safety gate. So, first of all, it is really important to establish this new regulation to ensure health, because some food, every food actually, can be affected by many risks and dangers like bacteria, mold, pesticides, additives,
UI.
and wait a minute, and also some physical dangers like parts of plastic and hair. So this is why regulations are fundamental. They are essential in this case because the risk is real and we could face health problems just because we did not control our food properly. I accept your PI.
Are you aware of the fact that all of the regulation that we can foster eventually are at the level of production and not at the level of consumption? And the problem that you have brought so far are the problem of consumption and not production.
That was not my point. The problems I have said where exactly the production we need to control the production. I said about bacteria and mold. We can solve that by putting strict controls on factories. I said pesticides and additives, and we could control that by strictly controlling the chemical properties and how food is made and what chemicals are put in it. And I also said parts of plastic and hair, which is also a production problem, which will be solved by strictly controlling the employees and the process, the process, the making process. So, as I was saying, safety regulations are fundamental, and it is also important to apply them to all food because the risks are not related only to novel foods, are related mainly to vegetables, eggs, and meat consumed, and meat foods that were consumed also before 1997. So, this is why it is important to strictly control our food with scientific researches because it is fundamental to make sure that all products that we eat are safe. And if they are not safe, they need to be retired from the market immediately. That is why RAPEX exists. RAPEX is the European Union rapid alert system that allows member states to share information about dangerous products on the market, and it can withdraw and recall or ban products. But how can it be effective if it is not put on all food? It is a powerful preventive tool that allows the alert to be spread evenly among the European Union. But it can only work if all food products fall under the same European safety framework. This is the end of my speech. I thank you all for your attention. I give the floor to the first speaker of the episode.
8 minutes and 34 seconds. Okay, Franco and Annelies are okay? Yeah, very well. So let's go to the third speaker from opposition team. Miele, when you want, please, you can go.
Okie dokie, I will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, everyone. I'm Francesco Miele from Liceo Calciopoli Naples, here today as the third speaker for the opposition team for the motion that states this house will require all foods already on the market to undergo the European safety assessment currently mandated for novel foods. My role today is to enforce our case, directly address what has been said by the proposition team, highlighting their inconsistencies, and show clearly why the opposition world is more reasonable, realistic, and preferable. Now, I start by analyzing the points brought by the proposition team to then go on and have a general analysis of this debate. Now, let's start by the first point portrayed by the first speaker of the proposition team. The first thing they said is that we need this kind of regulations. They are fundamental, but we have to understand that we already have them, as we already showed in all of our speeches of the opposition team. Now, they even said that production, in this case, may have undergone changes due to climate changes at this point, but we have to understand one thing. If there are changes, then let's act on the specific sector, not on the entire economic system. That's what was missing in their argumentation. They didn't understand what impact this kind of motion will have. They even talked about specific cases like the risks of food that will have like eggs that will cause even salmonella. But at this case, so for some general cases, we should stop the entire production. The answer is simply no. Problems can occur to common foods, and we can avoid these dangers with more precise testing, they said. But they said this while not even specifying at this case how will this test would affect the whole process of food being brought on the market. How, in this case, do we really solve the problem? They said that the regulations are necessary to protect the health of the population, but we already have regulations that are key for the population to be protected. So we do not need something that will just create a bigger problem for the production. They don't talk about how these big regulations will have even a big economical effect. Now let's move on to the second speaker. He said that security is key, but let's just say one thing. They repeated the same value all over again. Let's just specify something. EFSA controls secures eventual risks, but EFSA controls are strictly related to novel foods and their problems, not normal food in which in this case will just be a control really unnecessary. Now, they even said that they know that the regulations in the European Union are strict, but they want to protect people. Well, do we protect people by slowing a sector in the whole continent? That's a risky and just useless move. Let me just say this. Another big point that we have to talk about is the POI I made to the second speaker. I said that isn't a long-term consumption itself the strongest form of safety evidence, especially compared to novel foods where non-population level data exist, which today they just responded to normal people are not scientists. Well, I think we can all agree with that, but that doesn't just answer my question. Doesn't just applying normal regulations for a long period of time be more effective than applying a strict regulation that will just become a big problem for the economic future of the European Union? They always repeat the same value of wanting to protect people without wanting, in this case, caring of what the consequences of the regulations are. They even said that in this case, the regulations, they existed, but in 2023, we experienced many diseases outbreaks. But let me just say one thing. Diseases don't really take into account just the fact that we get them from food. There are many factors that contribute to the spread of a disease. They said, and let's just move on to another point. They said that this regulation is needed, but they don't respond to how these specific regulations solve the problem of the debate. They don't show their burden. They say this just solves the problem. This will be better for everybody. But the regulations of novel foods are different. It is a regulation of data collecting, not something that we have just to base our entire argumentation on. They even said the normal food are dangerous. They even talked about salmonella that can be caught from eggs, or even about the fact that raw chicken can be dangerous. Well, How do regulation eliminate the problem that comes from this kind of foods? They do not eliminate it. Maybe they will work in their work, but in reality, they will just have no real effect and will slow the whole process of food markets in the European Union. They continually say that this problem exists and the regulation will solve it. Well, the regulation are at the level of consumption. Salmonella and mold is at the level of consumption. You have salmonella in this case, for example, even in chicken or other foods, but that doesn't change. That isn't related to the fact that we have to control the food. That those are problems that come after the production. That is the key point. Now, let me just create a big resume of what they said. The proposition argued that all foods currently on the market should be reevaluated under the Novel Foods Safety Framework in order to guarantee a higher consumption protection. Well, their case realizes on the assumption that current food safety regulations are insufficient and that a universal risk assessment, in this case in the European Union, is necessary to prevent potential risks regardless of product's history or risk level, which in this case is just making up a big problem just to solve it with a regulation that will do nothing. Why is this solution problematic? This reasoning is deeply flawed because it relies on an exaggerated claims and impracticability and a complete lack of proportionality. First, the proposition ignores the existing regulation framework that is key. They do not show us how the regulations are ineffective. They do not portray this. And the proposal is unrealistic and unfeasible, requiring every single food product on the market to undergo a novel food assessment. In this case, would overwhelm EFSA and national authorities, create massive delays, and effectively freeze the food market with no clear additional safety benefit. But now let's just move on to what we presented instead. In this case, the opposition team offered a more balanced and practical and evidence-based approach. We demonstrated that the current system already works. We have shown that novel foods, in this case addictive enzymes or any other kind of products related to processing methods, already undergo strict pre-market authorization. What in this case a system is not just a waste. We do not have to show these regulations. Their argumentation was just all foods must be recessed because any food could potentially pose a risk, which is not true. We have shown that the motion in this case is unnecessary because food are already safe, harmful because it disrupts a sector worth billions and shift costs onto customers instead, and it is unrealistic because it overloads regulatory institutions without delivering real benefits. For these reasons, the opposition clearly offers the more rational, effective, and proportionate approach to food safety. And with that, I conclude my speech.
8 minutes. Okay. Annelies and Franco are ready? Yes, you are. So let's go to the last speaker from opposition team, Bollero. When you want, please take the floor. Thank you.
I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, my name is another again Junior Bollero, here to take on the role of the reply speech. First off, it is been a wonderful debate, but like every debate, we need to do the reply speech, and we need to separate the word that we have seen in this this debate. First, our word of opposition is a word of control on food, a word that fosters regulation made for citizens and that respect the personal economical ability, a word where every citizen, every person is secure for food. Their word is instead a word of non-attention regarding their citizen. They don't know what this regulation is about. They want them to pay significant price for bettering in control where we already have the regulation. First off, in simple answer, who respect the burden of proof of today's debate? Side proposition does not answer to their burden because they don't show how specifically this regulation fostered the resolution of their problem. So, and we answer to our burden of proof because eventually we show how this regulation is useless for the kind of problem that for the motion that we're simply talking about today. Also talking about some strategic mistakes from their side. They don't engage with our side and the status quo. So it's kind of a a parallel debate. They don't engage with what we are saying. Now passing on the point of clash, we have mainly individuated 3 point main of clash. First, uh, the regulation of this motion eventually solves the problem of health. Our side says that we already have the regulation needed for food, and the novel food regulation, in this case, in this motion, is useless because it affects another part of the production, which is exclusive to the novel foods and not normal food. So we say that eventually this regulation is useless for normal food. Their side says that simply believe that it's efficient, but don't show how eventually this regulation precisely is efficient for the problem they're trying to say they are trying to solve. So we win this clash because they don't prove how it does solve the problem. They simply give us this clash because the regulation precisely made for novel food, and it is time costing and also very expensive. So we win this clash. Second clash, the problem is at consumption and not at production. We believe that the problem is the problem at production eventually already solved because we have many regulation, and eventually if there will be a problem at consumption, we already have in my speech set out there exists a specific organ that occupies to solve the problem immediately. Their side instead advocates for an existing problem that exists at production, but we have another time again, we have deregulation needed for that. The third and last, so we win this clash because simply have the regulation already in the status quo. Third clash, how we treat our stakeholders. In our debate, the stakeholders have a principal role. We protect the citizens by both controlling the prices and to allow them to consume a controlled food. Their side simply eventually says more control, but at cost, eventually to not solve the problem really, but eventually to make every citizen to pay a lot and eventually to not afford their food. So we win this debate because at the end of the day, you should prefer a world where we are safe by our regulation already existing in the status quo, and not eventually a world where they eventually make a potential crisis due to the overload of regulation and of useless regulation. With that, I rest my case.
4 minutes and 10 seconds. Okay, Annelies and Franco, are you ready? Yes, you are. So let's go to the very last speaker of this debate. I think she will be La Cortella. Yes, when you want, please.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So I would start my speech with thanking you all for listening to us, and now I will conclude the debate with explaining to you why my team has shown pretty right reasons, and I will also explain why. I will also explain the points of clash of the cons team. So, our first speaker has demonstrated that the European safety assessment currently mandated only for novel foods testing, can guarantee higher level of health protection for customers. Sadly, they can only guarantee it for novel foods. So food safety cannot rely on assumptions or habits that of what people eat every day. And this we'll stop a minute and explain and talk about the first point of clash of the council. They said that with more testing, the prices will rise. But as my teammates said, health has no price, and if we test now, the rising prices would be controlled. Otherwise, if we test them, if we don't test them, we won't be able to control what the economical prices will be. So the first teammate has also demonstrated why labeling is fundamental and mislabeling can lead to serious health consequences. Me, as the second speaker, I explain why scientific updating and regulatory coherence are essential, and that foods that were consumed before May 1997 are no longer the same products today. So agricultural practices, industrial processing, and storage conditions, and even climate change have profoundly modified their characteristics. So, in this context, relying only on historical consumption is scientifically insufficient and unfair, thing that the Cons team has said and highlighted with the second speaker, I believe. And this is the second point of clash of the Cons team. My third teammate focused on the role of RAPEX as key preventive tool in European food safety. RAPEX allows member states to rapidly share information on dangerous foods and to act quickly through withdrawals, recalls, or bans. However, its effectiveness depends on having common European safety frameworks for all foods. If some products are regulated only on national levels, thing that the Cons team has said, I don't remember the law, but they said it. Safety gap emerge and risks can easily cross borders in a single market like the EU. And only with harmonized regulations, we can ensure fast coordination, equal consumer protection, and truly effective prevention. So, taken together, all of these arguments show that our position is not extreme, but reasonable, coherent, and necessary. So, applying the same safety assessment to all foods does not block innovation, does not punish traditional foods and products. Instead, it ensures fairness, transparency, and equal protection for all consumers. So, if food change, science must verify it, and if science evolves, regulation must follow it. For this reason, this House should clearly support mandatory European safety assessments for all foods on the market. Thank you. This is the end of my speech.
4 and 11 seconds. Okay, now, please open up all your microphone, and then obviously you have to clap your hands. Before leaving you, I pray one of you, maybe Miele, to remind me that I have to open up again my recording system when I will be back, okay? Because sure,
maybe I just have to leave before, and so Eugenio will.
So Eugenio, okay, Eugenio, please remind me that, because I'm sure I will forget it, okay? I'm so sure that, okay? Okay, we see you later.